Today we are going to go over the secret sauce side of things. We're going to talk mostly about building blocks that you can use to create some customized strategies using more advanced stuff that we haven't covered before, and that are kind of adapted from other things that I've learned over the years, and folks have shared with me and with other customers, and as well as some strategic things that you can think about. This is very much intended to be a creative thing for you, as opposed to here's a follow the blueprint sort of thing. The reason being, as with anything, we want to be able to fit these into whatever strategy you're already using, and so that's pretty important. But there are definitely some things that most people don't talk about when it comes to press releases that you can do to kind of enhance the value of them, and you can even leverage some of these strategies in other parts of your SEO strategy as well. So the first building block that we're going to talk about is the link redirects. We touched on these in a previous session with when you're linking to other press releases, usually in the context of a stack, that you might use a redirect service, similar to Bitly or something like that. We do kind of recommend that any third-party links that you particularly care about and that you think might go away, so if you don't control them, consider using a link redirect. Usually you'll want to have a custom domain that is just for your links, so that you're not, some of these redirect apps get spammed, and you don't want to be in a bad neighborhood SEO wise. So having a custom domain for yourself, sometimes you have to pay a little bit more for that, for your service subscription, but it's definitely a good value. This lets you manually rotate links if they drop. So if a site that you're linking to goes away, you can rotate it in the link redirect, and you're in good shape there. You don't lose the power that you got from that press release, especially if you're using stacks or something like that. There are a couple of things that you might consider doing for stacks, and this is stuff that a lot of people haven't talked about. One is to either automatically or periodically rotate link stacks through different pickup links. So when you're linking to a previous press release in a stack, do that through a redirect. And then every once in a while, or on an automated basis, if your software supports it, you rotate that to a different pickup in that same, for that same press release. And now you're kind of building up additional press release pickups for that stack. So you're almost duplicating and enhancing the entire stack just by doing that. The other thing that you could do is, for stacks, you can redirect based on the referral domain. So if you can always send it to one pickup if it comes from one referral domain, and if it comes from another referral domain, again, you're using the domains, the pickup domains that you get in your list. So let's say you're linking to Newsmax. Well, if it comes from CenturyLink, you want to link to Newsmax, but if it comes from Newsmax, you don't want to link to Newsmax, so you might link to Atlantic Broadband instead, or something like that. Hopefully that makes sense. I can sketch this out and post it if that's necessary, but the key here is that your redirect software has to support that. Some of them do, some of them don't, but that right there can, using a single stack, using that kind of redirect methodology, can really kind of, especially if you don't do reciprocal. So if you just kind of do it almost like in a wheel type of format, you can actually end up using every single pickup in a stack, or for a press release in that given stack. So you can really amplify things that way. Not a lot of people are doing that. In fact, very few people are doing that, but it's definitely something worth considering. The next building block that I want to talk about is a Silo Cloud. This is kind of a adaptation of what we've talked about before with methods of building stacks. What we're going to do is you're going to build a cloud type stack. Same as before. You've got your target page, you've got the base release for the cloud, but instead of individual press releases, you're going to do those full stacks. And we talked about this really briefly in a previous session, but each silo has a separate topic or keyword, and then you're going to link to that base release. For extra bonus points, link to other silos with a second link in your release. So let's say silo 1, release 3 might link to silo, well, actually that should be silo 1, 2, and 3. I should probably, fix that in the slides. But silo 2 would link, would link back to, say, press release 2 in silo 3, for example. So you can add some cross-linking in the actual silo releases just to give, kind of a little bit more cross-relevance. Combining this with the redirect that we talked about before, turns us into this big, gigantic, tangled mess of backlinks that the Googlebot and other crawlers are going to get stuck in, and they're going to go back and forth, and you're going to kind of amplify everything. Very similar to building, looped iframe pages and things like that. That you may have heard people talking about when you trap the crawler essentially in your own structure until it reaches its crawl depth. All of that link equity is going to end up in your lap as opposed to somebody else's. So this is a building block, and it's especially powerful when used with the link redirect methods here, specifically these last two for with the stacks. The third one is what I call kind of a hyper indexer. This is a really easy way to get stuff indexed, especially press releases. And we're just going to leverage Google's own products. Google loves to index its own stuff. And we've known this. We've used Google Sheets for lots of things. Use Google Docs for things. You've used Google Sheet or Google Stacks, using Google Drive, things like that. All of these strategies leverage Google's own products because Google loves its own product. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a pickup list from a press release. You're going to drop that into a Google Sheet, a new Google Sheet just for that press release. You're going to make sure that that sheet is shared through read access to the public. So anyone who has the link gets read access to it. Make sure you give that Google Sheet a good relevant name. So you might say, you use the press release title, for example, or something like that. Make sure the brand of the company is in that title. And then you're going to, in the next column over, you're going to use the hyperlink function to create an explicit link to that press release in that column. And you're just going to do that you're just going to copy and paste that into all the cells next to all of the pickups. And then you're going to use that link, the share link, as a link in another press release, often as part of a manual stack or a one-off or something like that. And then that's basically building extra backlinks to this Google Sheet. There's a few other things that I can't share in public, unfortunately, about how you might get those links indexed, but this method here is pretty beefy, and there's lots of other great things that you can do with Google Sheets. Brian over at Fusion Vine, he's got a mastermind class sort of thing that he calls Freaking the Sheets. Definitely well worth the entry fee. The things that Brian has come up with for leveraging Google Sheets is ridiculous. He uses it in his business in some extremely creative ways that I even wouldn't have even thought of. So definitely check that out if you're interested. But the core here is think of ways that you can use Google's products against them, so to speak, especially the Google Sheets. Hyperlink is especially powerful because you can, kind of programmatically create a bunch of links. You might think of other ways where you could, build some keyword relevance and things like that with this type of a methodology. There is no reason to not have multiple link columns in here as well. Obviously, don't link to exactly the same, the same keyword or anything like that, but you can absolutely, do multiple links. You could use multiple press releases in a given sheet. You can link sheets together. You can replicate your media room, for example, in a stack of Google Sheets. There's a lot of really creative things that you could do. So you could take you take an organization page, you put a link to it in your Google Sheet, you use a link to all of the other press releases in Google Sheets, and then you create a Google Sheet for each one of those press releases, and you drop the pickup list into that Google Sheet. So now you have one Google Sheet at the organization level that is kind of mirroring your media room, and that links to other Google Sheets. Each one of them is mirroring one of the press releases with its pickup lists, and then you can build links to these. You can build all kinds of backlinks to a Google Sheet. You can hammer it with, whatever type of backlinks you might like. It's not going to damage that that page because it lives on Google's domain. All right. Next strategy here, embed farms. This is something where you can get super creative. I've got a couple of different ways that you can use it, and then you can get very creative with it along the way. But at its core, an embed farm is just a simple HTML page that it holds iframe embeds of other pages. In this case, we're talking about press release pickups. You're going to put this on some sort of cloud hosting with a generic domain like S3 or something like that. You do not want to use any form of custom domain for these types of things. Always use whatever the public cloud gives you by default. So like for your S3 bucket or whatever Azure or any of these other cloud hosts use that. And you can really use any cloud hosting domain. So DigitalOcean or whatever, any of these guys will work with it. Then you'd use this as a stack link target. Or as a secondary embed. This works especially well for a secondary embed. And then you can also tier them. So, at its core, you take this HTML page, and just like how we did with Google Sheets before, we dropped every single link into the sheet. Here, we're just going to iframe every single pickup. And so you're going to take the export of, out of the press release page, you're going to drop all of them into the iframe, and then you're going to have one page that embeds every single press release pickup. And if we remember, one of the reasons why we use iframes is because it does not pass link penalty, and it's a very clean embed model, or it's a clean linking model. And so we definitely love to use these as much as we can. What I like to do is kind of very similar to, to what we talked about before with replicating the organization on a Google Sheets. We're going to do that with an embed farm. So you're going to have an embed farm that represents the organization, and then every single release that you issue has its own embed page, and you're going to embed that page into the embed farm. Pretty straightforward. Call it a farm of farms if you want, a tiered farm, whatever. But this is very, very effective. And again, you're going to build backlinks to this page, and everything's just going to flow all the way through. Like I said, you can get super creative here with different variations of that. You can add other relevant embeds besides just the pickups. So you can use YouTube videos, service pages, socials, stuff like that. And since we're building on generic hosting, you can totally hammer these with backlinks. But we only want to use iframes on these pages if we're going to hammer them with backlinks. If we are going to do something else, like having regular links on the page or something like that, we don't necessarily want to hammer it with kind of generic backlinks. What we want to do is embed that page yet again into a farm page and hit that page with the backlinks. So we're filtering out any of that penalty. We do, of course, lose a little bit of link equity, quote unquote, but that's just kind of par for the course. And so you just build some extra backlinks. Lots of different core strategies on how to use embed farms like this. Brian and Lee are two folks that do this a lot. Lee especially, although it's very difficult to get into his mastermind, it's also worth the money. And Semantic Mastery also teaches some good strategies with that as well. And as with most things, the real good stuff is you're not going to find it out in public. Schema. We've talked briefly about using schema. I recommend it. Definitely use the relevant org schema, but get really creative and leverage your release schema. A lot of people don't use it, and they really should. You can here's 4 subtrees to dig into. Creative work and intangible are kind of probably my favorites. Intangible lets you put review stars up, and you can use FAQ schema and all types of things. Creative work is really good for if you're linking to something specific that is fits into that creative work category. Most people sleep on this and they don't use it. I have seen customers get review stars on a press release by including the relevant schema. So do it. Include as much schema and be as creative as you possibly can with this. And if you don't know, there's a link to the docs for what schema Google takes a look at, and there's all kinds of stuff in there. Get in there, play around with it, click through the tree and look and see what's relevant. Organizations, a lot of people just stick with local business, but there's actually a lot of other organization subtypes that might be a little bit more relevant. Similar with places, depending on what you're promoting, there may be a good place that is relevant. So definitely take a look at those. And place really belongs in your standard org schema as opposed to specifically with release schema. But sometimes it would be only relevant for a release as opposed to your standard schema. Leverage the last one I want to go over here, and I want to keep today's session brief, but that is to leverage your secondary embeds. It's not a secret, it's in the interface. It's been in the interface for years. I haven't really pitched it very hard, told people what it is, but so it's definitely very underutilized. What that does is it gives a second iframe embed that goes out on the wire with your press release. This is great for things that you don't want people to see because it's a 1-by-1 and it doesn't generally show up visually on the page other than a little dot, and nobody knows what that little dot represents. So things you might actually use here is typically it's an ID page. That's what a lot of people are using it for. The second thing that people mostly use it for are the base page of a tiered embed form. You can use it for a regular embed form, if you wanted to as well, but most people will use the root of a tiered form for that as well. Oh, and by the way, with your embed forms, you can actually also do that, take your Google Sheets and embed those as well. So on that release one, and right next to the embed of the press release pickup, put the sheet for that as well, or put that on your base of the root next to the embed form for that release. You'd have an embedded version of the Google Sheet for that release as well. So you can embed those, and that's pretty awesome as well. If you're using cloud stacks, whether it's with Yax or some other tool, or you're building them manually or buying them from somebody, like Semantic or Heavy Hitters Club or somebody like that, you should feel free to use that for your secondary embed. Some people will just use the GMB map or a YouTube channel, and very few people will, but sometimes they do, will use the Press Advantage organization page, which ends up creating kind of a circular embed. So it loops there, and it has the effect of kind of walking out the crawler's crawl depth there again, and essentially getting that Googlebot trapped in your page.